So when you have 500,000 migrants, illegal immigrants, depending on how you want to utilize the words, and you've given them this parole status saying, hey, you can come into the country while we figure out what to do with you. We're not really sure what to do with you yet. And then after 2 years, you say, you know what? You don't have the parole status anymore. You can apply for a different status or you have to self-deport. What are the odds that 500,000 people decide, okay, I can't stay in the United States anymore? The odds of that are zero. What was this process and how did it get to this point? And exactly what has this administration done to all of us? Tony Katz today, good to be with you. Griff Jenkins joins me right now from Fox News. You catch him every weekend there on Fox. Of course, he has been covering the border since before it was cool to cover the border. I want to get into this parole conversation with you because no one has the insights like you do. But you are still, you got there over the weekend. You're still in Western North Carolina. You've been surveying the damage, reporting back on this. Before we get into the political of it, talk to me about what it is that you're seeing and what officials are saying about what they might still find.
Well, let me just start with this, Tony, and that is one thing is clear. This is going to be the magnitude of the destruction that I'm standing looking at in Swannanoa, North Carolina, and you may have just heard overhead a helicopter. That helicopter, by the way, is a private citizen helicopter, private groups that were the first to respond to this tragedy. Here in Swannanoa, I'm sitting outside a tire store that has been completely wiped off, removed from its foundation, dragged in shambles over the riverbank of the Swannanoa River. It crested more than 25 feet, a van upside down, a car upside down into that creek. And for as far as the eye can see, businesses and homes are destroyed with debris and mud and everything littered everywhere. And this is just one of the Western North Carolina communities, along with Chimney Rock and Marion and other areas where literally the towns were wiped out. But what I was doing today on the channel was I had an exclusive ride-along in a Black Hawk helicopter operated by Samaritan's Purse that was taking SpaceX's chief electrical engineer with dozens of Starlinks into communities that have been entirely cut off. You think, Tony, about hurricanes, you don't think about them hitting the mountains, but that's exactly what happened here. Along with the rising flooding rivers, even high in the mountains of North Carolina, the wind that ran up the hollers caused massive damage and cut off communities. And the helicopter I was with, Samaritan's First, flew into these communities only reachable by helicopter, and these people have been trapped. Yesterday I was doing it. That was day 9. Today's day 10. People are still cut off. Yeah. No power, no water, and Starlink lets them get back on in communication to talk to people and get the help they need. Now, it's really quite remarkable.
The whole helicopter conversation, we had heard that people were told by law enforcement, you can't fly in here, you can't land here, you can get arrested. Is that still happening, or are they realizing they need all the private help they can possibly get?
You know, I am certainly aware of that, and I haven't seen that in person. And as I've been covering hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina was the first one I covered back in 2005, and in the immediate hours and days afterwards, the story evolves, and there's a lot of conflicting stuff. It may have happened. I haven't seen it. However, I will say that a lot of the people that we talk to, particularly in those communities that have been cut off, I asked them, have you seen anybody from the government? Have you seen FEMA? And they've said no. And I think that's why the scrutiny on the government response has been so strong. Now, here we are so many days later. I can tell you, 82nd Airborne's going up and down the street in Humvees. They're responding pretty aggressively now. But, it's just one of these things that I'm not sure anyone saw it coming with destruction this big. But, the fact of the matter is, you got a death toll that stands at more than 230 across 7 states. This is a situation that should have gotten a stronger response by most people's common sense analysis of it. And now they're bracing for that Hurricane Milton that just turned into a Cat 4 hurricane that's going to pummel Florida.
Talking to Griff Jenkins of Fox News. He is there in Western North Carolina right now. Yes, Milton is going to create massive storm surge and flooding issues for the coast of Florida, past Gainesville into the Bend, down south past Naples for sure. But we talk here about the response in North Carolina, the response to the storm. You talk about Hurricane Katrina. Of course, then President George W. Bush took it on the chin for flying over the damage. It wasn't fast enough, left people to die. All of this anger and hostility, and some of it being about, of course, government ineptness. The whole line of Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job, talking about FEMA Director Michael Brown. And now we have a situation where we're hearing from, whether it's Brett Jensen, who is the lead reporter, WBT Radio in Charlotte. We're hearing from others that there were days where the government did nothing. There doesn't seem to be coordination between FEMA and North Carolina. And it seems that aid is not getting where it needs to go. Is that still the feeling on the ground?
It is. Yesterday, we went into a tiny little cutoff community called Burnsville, and it's in the mountains, and an 83-year-old woman was standing on her porch waving. I was with Edward Graham, son of Reverend Franklin Graham of Samaritan's Purse, and Mike Coriel of Starlinks. They said, we need to stop. Maybe this woman needs help. We go up. 83-year-old Sue has been there by herself, trapped in her home, no power, no water, in tears. She had recent heart surgery about 3 or 4 weeks ago, she said. Her husband died. And we, not me, but the team, Samaritan's First and SpaceX, gave her a generator, set it up, connected it to her house so she has power, and gave her a Starlink so she could begin reaching out to her family, her granddaughter, to let her know that she's fine and alive, and also to get online to connect and make phone calls for medicines that she needs. But she said she hasn't seen anybody up there from the government or otherwise. And, you know, the sad part of it is it's pretty clear from, you know, the reporting from many reporters that responded to this that there's more, you know, Sue's not an isolated case by any stretch of the means.
Let me take you out of this conversation regarding North Carolina, and let's move it over to the southern border. Certainly, we have seen that on the northern border, the Swannanoa sector, which is that Vermont sector, New York, and through. They've got more crossings than ever before. But this latest reporting over there from Adam Shaw at Fox News that the Biden administration will not extend parole for 500,000 plus migrants in this program that they have. This seems to be an invitation to just allowing people to stay in the country and not have any tracking of them whatsoever. What is the latest here?
Well, you know, what you're talking about here, Tony, that I've reported a lot on, and I hate using acronyms because it loses the listeners and viewers, but it's known as the CHMV program, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, all countries that we have difficulty in returning migrants when they cross. So the government, which was getting over the past 3 years a massive influx of them, many of them, we've documented the cases of Venezuelans and the Tren de Aragua gang, the Haitians that have murdered and raped people that came in through this program. Very controversial. It started in January of 2023. They've brought now 530,000 plus people here for a 2-year parole to get permission to come legally. They needed the legal pathway to cut down on the illegal crossings. But now they're saying that when your 2 years is up, then you will not be extended. In the redefined print, you have to find an alternative way to be able to stay, another legal pathway, whether it's a temporary protected status or otherwise, to find a way. So they're telling them basically, you got to find another way to be here legally, otherwise yours expires. But they're also in the same breath saying, Tony, that they're still continuing to accept new applications to the program. So the announcement wasn't that they're ending the program altogether, which is what many critics said should have been done. They're just saying that the people that are here, if you're here now, when your 2 years is up, you'd better have a plan for a alternative or another way to stay here legally. Otherwise, you'll be put in removal proceedings. Well, how many migrants do we have in removal proceedings that aren't going to show up to self-deport?
Exactly.
And we know ICE is overtaxed with trying to go out and chase down, because remember, Border Patrol's on the actual border itself. ICE deals with the problem in the interior. There's an ICE official told me that they are roughly, every single ICE agent has roughly 7,000 cases they're dealing with. You can't possibly deal with bringing 7,000 people into custody if you're a single agent. And so they're having to prioritize, and the numerous stories of criminal migrants that they're having to go get is an ongoing list that's getting bigger and bigger. And so really this announcement, I think, was intended to perhaps gain a positive PR look that they're cracking down, because of course that's why President Harris's thing, but it doesn't really show. I mean, I think from a practical standpoint, it does very little, I think, to show there's any crackdown at all, because they're continuing to accept applications to the program.
So they're telling people in the program they're no longer going to extend the program, but they're also telling people not in the program that we have this program and you can get in it?
Essentially, yes. I mean, the program itself is not ending. It's just the people that are here on parole, when your 2 years is up, you better have another plan. Otherwise, you need to come in and self-deport, which, as we all know, if we're being honest here, is going to happen in a very few cases.
Talking to Griff Jenkins over at Fox News, the idea of self-reporting doesn't happen. I mean, you know the numbers better than I, but I think we would be correct in making the assumption that it doesn't happen in the vast majority of cases. It happens possibly in some cases. When people don't self-report and therefore self-deport, in this case, we are hearing that we don't have the resources to go after these people. How are they then able to get jobs, go about driver's licenses, et cetera? Do those things get the ability to get a job revoked and the idea of having a license revoked as well?
Well, that's a great question, and it's actually a really important question. I don't know the answer about whether or not they could continue to work, which is ultimately what the majority of them really want, is just a job. And that's why they came here, because there wasn't one in their country. And, you know, while there's some compassion for that, you know, economic migration is not a legitimate reason to stay here illegally or come here illegally. But I don't know the answer whether, if they already received work authorization, which they did when they came under this program, whether they can continue to work, and if it's extended or not, even if their time expires. It's a great, important question, and I guess, you know, unless you're really a dogged reporter trying to chase down cases and keep pressing in the coming months and years on the administration, I'm not sure that the American people will ever ultimately know what the result of that is.
Before I let you go, certainly as you pay attention to these things, we pay attention to the election. We see what connects and doesn't connect with the voter. We know that the border is a serious issue. Is the border, as you see it, a defining issue in how some people are voting?
I absolutely think so. And again, it's just one guy's observation, and it's an observation of the guy that's covered the border extensively. But I would argue that, Tony, the story of the chaos of the border is the biggest story of the Biden-Harris administration and of the last 4 years, because of the tremendous impact it's had on both public safety and national security implications. And, you know, the administration can talk all day long about how the numbers are lowest they've been, you know, since however long. But, you know, just 6 months, 8 months, a year ago, they were the highest they've ever been. And we've got more people from more places, to include special interest aliens from countries that sponsor terrorism, like Syria, Lebanon, Iran. These numbers have never been anything like this. And I think that the story of the border crisis is resonating because it's one that has continued to grow and grow. And ultimately, the other networks, not just Fox, who was at one point the only organization that was covering it, every network started covering it because they realized how big the story is and how unavoidable it is. And I think that you're going to find after this election happens that many people, and the polls show that among the top issues, immigration is always up there. I think you're going to see that it did indeed have an impact on the outcome of November.
Griff Jenkins, Fox News. Catch him weekends, catch him at the border, catch him right here. Griff Jenkins, always a pleasure. More to get to. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today.